On this day when we look at the importance of food and feeding the hungry, I want to just do a quick sweep of the Bible and look at what it is that God says about this particular topic, to feed or not to feed in a whistle-stop tour. Genesis chapter 41 in verse 32, we hear the story of Pharaoh. Now, Pharaoh is a foreign king and has foreign powers, a lot of power actually. He rules over the land of Egypt, and he has a dream. And Joseph is invited to come and interpret this dream. But I want to zoom in on the point of the dream. What is the purpose of this strange dream of 7 cows lean and 7 cows fat, and the ears of corn? It's a dream about food security, and the intention of the dream, as Joseph comes to interpret, he says, the reason the dream was given to Pharaoh in 2 forms is so that you will know that God has already decided and will do it soon. God comes to give Pharaoh a dream to ensure food security for the land of Egypt. And then we move on to Exodus chapter 16. There's a story of liberation. The people of God are freed from slavery and they find themselves in a wilderness. And in chapter 16, it's about 2 months after they've been in the wilderness, and they come and they complain and they moan and they are very, very upset and distressed about the fact that they don't have any food to eat. And so Moses, their leader, goes and cries out to God. And what does he cry out to God for? For food. God, feed us. We are hungry. And God is quick to respond. And so we hear the story of daily manna is poured out. It rains, literally food raining from heaven. And there's an instruction that goes with this. The instruction is collect only what you need. Only what you need. Because if you collect any more, it'll begin to stink. When we have too much food, more than we need, according to Exodus, that just stinks. It doesn't only stink, it's an act of disobedience to God. In Exodus 16, God says, I will test them to see if they can obey my commandment. And then we fast forward to Leviticus chapter 25. I think in this story, as we listen to the instructions given by God, it's important for us to ask the question, so what is God's intention here with Leviticus 25? Included in all of the dreams of God for the world, one is that everyone will have enough food to eat. And then what about First Kings? We hear the story of Isaiah. He is in a fight with all the false prophets of Baal. And after this amazing display of a miracle, he then flees Jezebel and he ends up in a wilderness. And what does God do? God sends an angel to bake cake for him on hot stones and wakes him up from his sleep and says, get up and eat. 1 Kings chapter 19. Now let's go to Jesus. Matthew records 2 stories, one of Jesus feeding 5,000 and one of Jesus feeding 4,000. But I want to go a little bit just before that. Matthew teaches us this prayer. He shares with us this prayer that Jesus teaches his own disciples. And at the heart of this prayer, right in the center, if you were to read the message, the prayer from the outside in, at the core of this prayer that Jesus prays is, give us today our daily bread. And so if we are disciples of Jesus, praying the prayer that Jesus taught us to pray, it's a prayer that the hungry would be fed. And not just the hungry, but all people will be fed every single day. And so when we think about God's response to hunger and God's agenda for feeding, right there in the prayer of every disciple, the core teachings of Jesus, at the heart of that prayer is a prayer that all will be fed. And so we get to participate in making God's dreams come true, in being answers to one another's prayers when we get involved in feeding the hungry. But I want to slow down a little and pause at Matthew chapter 25. Matthew records in chapter 25 this story. There's sort of three of them, the parable of the virgins and then of the talents, and then comes the final judgment, the last, the ultimate judgment that comes as a consequence of Jesus sitting on the throne. The reign of Jesus brings with it the consequence of judgment. And Jesus gives to us criteria, very clear criteria for this judgment. It says Jesus will sit on his throne and he will separate the sheep from the goats. The sheep from the goats. The sheep will be on his right and the goats will be on his left. And to the sheep he would say, "Come, you who are loved. Enter into the full inheritance of the kingdom. And you on the left, go away. I don't know you. I don't know you." Whoa, Jesus, that's kind of harsh, hey? And then those on his right will say, how is it? How is it that we get to enter into the kingdom? Now, you need to know that I'm paraphrasing for effect. But Jesus says words that are very sobering. He says, "When I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. And when I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. When I was naked, you gave me clothing to wear. And when I was imprisoned, you came and visited me." Jesus identifies his very self, his body, the incarnate body of the living God is identified with someone who is hungry and thirsty. And then Jesus goes on to say, "Those of you on my left who I do not know, I don't know you." Why is Jesus acknowledging an estrangement from a group of people? You see, when we estrange ourselves from the hungry, from the naked, from the thirsty, from those in prison, we estrange ourselves from Jesus himself. This is what Matthew 25 says. Because Jesus concludes with these words, "What you do for the least of these, you have done for me."